Oyasumi PunPun is one of the greatest mangas ever made. Written by the brilliant Iniano Asano, it stands out to this day as a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Oyasumi PunPun is a tragic, coming-of-age story that follows the life of the silent protagonist PunPun Onodera, from elementary school all the way up to his early 20s. It's a story that tackles some tough themes and messages in such a realistic manner, with incredibly relatable and fleshed out characters that all have their own positives and negatives that help to balance themselves out, with very few characters being truly unforgivable. It's a manga with a beautifully written story that captures the downward spiral of PunPun's life. In the early stages of the story, we are introduced to some of the driving forces that make up Oyasumi PunPun, like PunPun's childhood friends, with them serving as an opposing narrative that is disconnected from PunPun's life journey, as it explores the friendships between Seki and Shimizu and the rise of the Pegasus cult, which I think helps to illustrate just how minuscule PunPun's life is in the grand scheme of things. It is also in this stage of life that PunPun's love interest is established, which is one of the constants throughout PunPun's life, as his love for Aiko starts off as a simple crush but slowly grows into an obsession, whereas love for her becomes more and more depraved. The art details PunPun and his family's likeness to that of a bird, with the reader never getting to know their real names or see any of their faces. I personally really enjoyed this portrayal of the characters, as Inio Asano is still able to capture so much personality and expression with PunPun and his family within the confines of their design, perhaps to allow the reader to create their own image of the characters from the brief description given, or maybe the entire manga itself is the finished story of Sachi's manga that she was working on and chose to protect the identity of PunPun and his family. There are so many ways to interpret or explain why PunPun and his family are drawn the way they are, and that's why I love it. For Oyasumi PunPun, making a faceless, speechless character as interesting as possible is a tough ask, but it's executed incredibly well, as the story relies heavily on visual implication to tell the story rather than describing the emotions. Speaking of the visuals, the art quality is incredibly polished and captivating, as it tries its best to get you invested in the world and the characters that inhabit it. Inio Asano's unique art style works to great effect and has the incredible ability to blend his art together with realistic aspects, with extra detail being given to characters to make them feel more natural and fit into the world. The highlight of which being the different types of forms and expressions that PunPun uses that help to represent how he's feeling at that moment and what his mentality is, which is straight up nightmare fuel at times with the level of detail and creativity put into his forms. PunPun's identity at the start of the manga appears innocent, like what you would expect of a child, blindly ignorant to the real world, wanting to fly impossibly high to reach his dreams. But his exposure to domestic violence at such a young age, with him witnessing his father physically abusing his mother, drags him back to reality, shattering his naive view of the world, and as he ages with him being exposed to more and more traumatic events, becomes more depressed and cynical, to where we see the innocent PunPun we once knew gone. That everything he's experienced has violently changed who he is as a person, from a timid child into an ultra-aggressive, suicidal adult. Throughout the manga, these experiences PunPun have are made up of a variety of people that influence him both negatively and positively. Whether that's directly or indirectly, every character has influenced PunPun in one way or another, with one of the major experiences that affects PunPun is when Midori sexually assaults him. This event leaves PunPun scarred for life and damaged mentally. This is also the very beginning of where his obsession with sex would come from, as he begins to find it irresistible later in life. Despite this, Midori is always trying to help PunPun, and she is the one who saves Yuichi's life, but considering what she did to PunPun, I'm left feeling conflicted on this character, and that's what makes the characters so worth investing in for how flawed they are without outright hating them. With Yuichi, the uncle of PunPun, who is haunted by an incident at work where he was almost manipulated by a girl into killing her mother. While Yuichi wouldn't be manipulated, he would witness as a co-worker would attack the girl's mother after being manipulated, which would cause him to quit work. Yuichi is a flawed character, as his adulterous behavior constantly ruins his romantic relationships, which started to cause him to spiral out of control, as he has an internal conflict with himself over his actions to the point of thinking of suicide. However, it would be Midori who would save his life, as even after cheating on her, she chooses to be with him, saving him from himself. Yuichi does try his best to be a father figure to PunPun, teaching him important values in life, but as the story goes on, he appears less and less as PunPun gets older and eventually leaves his mother's house, which is why later on Sachi gets introduced and is one of the only positive influences for PunPun. I like how she was foreshadowed earlier on in the story and still returns to play a pivotal role in PunPun's PunPun's life. Sachi is the second love for PunPun, and it is during their time together that his inner voice, or god, doesn't show up at all, with his dark thoughts being silenced by all the friends he makes. As PunPun becomes close friends with Sachi as they work together on a manga, with their relationship being done beautifully and incredibly entertaining, while meeting so many other characters in this short time that help to make PunPun feel welcomed and loved, giving him a small reprieve from all the pain he's experienced up to this point. It wouldn't be until their manga gets rejected, where they start an argument and begin to drift apart, that God would return to him. And even after everything that goes on between the both of them, Sachi still remains there for PunPun, and is ultimately who is able to help PunPun to return to normal and rejoin society, where together with Sachi's daughter they are able to live a peaceful life, similar to how Yuichi was saved by Midori, repeating this cycle that having someone you can rely on is important in life. I found Mama PunPun to be an interesting character that affects PunPun a lot, as her mental health problems and constant outbursts at PunPun makes him dislike her, not even wanting to live in the same house as her. He resents his mother for driving his father away from him, but this is when it's revealed that the letters that his father had been writing to him were actually written by his mother. This is such a powerful reveal, as it's made clear that deep down she wanted to be a better mother to PunPun. This does a great job at redeeming PunPun's mother, while also completely disconnecting PunPun from his father, as he hasn't had any real communication with him for so long. When we do eventually meet his father, it doesn't matter how kind and nice his father is to PunPun, PunPun has become so disconnected from his father that he doesn't want to be around his father anymore, as he might as well be a stranger to him. These reveals help to emphasize how every character has their flaws, but are not overtly terrible human beings. I also really enjoy the alternate narrative of Oyasumi PunPun that follows Seki and Shimizu. I found them to be great characters, with their friendship being incredibly well fleshed out and developed throughout the manga, as Shimizu and Seki have very different personalities and ideologies, but are still able to get along with one another. Seki being someone who puts on a front to hide his low self-esteem and depressive thoughts from everyone else, resulting in him needing constant stimulation to hide away from all these thoughts, while Shimizu is a much weirder kid, as he suffers from hallucinations and has to ignore them in order to appear normal. Shimizu ends up getting wrapped in the Pegasus cult, where we learn that the world is going to end on July 7th, and that his powers are supposedly real and that his help is needed to save it, which is typical crazy cult behavior, but Oyasumi PunPun is great at integrating mild supernatural themes where you can't outright ignore the possibility, with Toshiki, the leader of the cult, believing that everything that will ever happen has already been set in stone, establishing this theme of us being doomed to repeat the mistakes of our past because it's impossible not to. Seki tries to convince Shimizu to lead the cult before it's too late, but is unable to, creating a fracture in their friendship, and on the day of July 7th, everyone commits suicide together. However, Seki is able to save Shimizu by overcoming his fear and pulling him out of the fire. Seki then sees the UFO with all the members of the Pegasus ensemble on it, including Shimizu. We then see everyone on the planet Punpunia that PunPun found at the start of the manga. So it's begging the question, is everything we're seeing real, or is it an illusion? I personally like to think that it's somewhere in the middle. It really is hard to explain the supernatural themes without believing them a bit, as when Seki saw Shimizu with the other Pegasus ensemble members, it could just be that Shimizu before the suicide attempt has effectively been killed, with how it affected his personality, or it could be a representation of his lost memories, or the person that PunPun sees as a child could just be somebody else, or maybe the meteor shower somehow allowed him to connect with his past self. Oyasumi PunPun never shows its full hand and benefits from it, allowing the reader to create the truth from the combination of what's real and what isn't. However, the most integral aspect of Oyasumi PunPun is easily Aiko. Aiko, who has endured countless years of abuse from her adopted mother, is the first love of PunPun. She plays a significant role in PunPun's growth throughout the story, both emotionally and psychologically, as she has a significant impact on him as a child, with her giving him his first kiss, giving him an unforgettable memory that sticks with PunPun. PunPun is initially intimidated by Aiko as he chooses not to go with her to Kagoshima, but then when they do eventually meet again later in their 20s, PunPun's personality has completely changed. Aiko's, on the other hand, has not, and she becomes scared of PunPun, only complying with him out of fear of being alone. At this point, PunPun has nothing left to lose, and this is what drives him down a dark path. But even with this, you can still sympathize with him to some extent, considering everything he's been through in his life, Throughout this final act, PunPun ends up knocking one of Aiko's teeth out, in a similar spot to the one that was missing when Aiko was younger. A callback that twists a pleasant memory into something evil, as his love for Aiko spirals out of control with him in his dehumanizing form. In their final moments together, Aiko and PunPun's relationship continues to deteriorate and fall apart, with the death of Aiko's mother dehumanizing PunPun, and Aiko realizing that the PunPun she once loved is gone, with him becoming a mere rational human being and not considering any humanistic desires or emotions. However, for one final moment, PunPun promises to shoulder the murder even knowing it was Aiko's doing, as long as she waits for him. This is a beautiful moment in the manga, and this one brief moment of light and kindness amongst all the cruelty proves to Aiko that PunPun really does love her and is able to fall in love with him. But knowing that his personality will continue to differ from the one she loves as long as she is alive, she chooses to end her own life, which is a truly bittersweet sacrifice, which in turn frees PunPun from the responsibility of Aiko and the guilt of murder, allowing him to start returning to normal. It really felt like a relationship that seemed possible but was never meant to be. Their time together is captured perfectly, as you get to see a real look into the lives that some people have experienced and their mindset from those experiences. God is another character that I find to be interesting, as it isn't really God, but more like the dark voice inside of PunPun's head convincing him to do awful things. Referred to as a dark spot, which is something we see in other characters like Wada, who becomes consumed by it after revealing his plan to betray Pegasus. For the most part, he is ignored by PunPun until meeting Aiko again, where he reaches a point of no return and acts out on his bad thoughts. We see God in his wounded eye and on his face in the mirror, a representation of how PunPun's darkness has taken shape and is now at the forefront of his actions. His dark thoughts would stay in control until the day of the meteor shower, where he stabs his eye where the god was, a visual representation of PunPun effectively killing off the dark thoughts that consumed him, ushering in a new PunPun free of his dark thoughts and desires, which I thought was perfect as it fit with the new world that Pegasus had preached about. The foreshadowing throughout the series is also noteworthy, with certain things being hinted at that don't play out for a while, like Sachi's introductions, PunPun wanting to be fearless, PunPunia, and the man on the factory roof. Oyasumi PunPun is a series that does a great job at realistically capturing the lives of human beings, but also comes with vague, supernatural elements across the manga, most notably with the UFO that Seki sees that carries all the members of Pegasus Ensemble, and how the person that PunPun saw on the factory roof is implied to be himself from the future. I enjoy how the story doesn't outright say that everything you're seeing is happening, but allows the reader to come up with their own theory for what is going on. The ending is possibly what I love the most about Oyasumi PunPun, as we get to meet Shuntaro one final time. Shuntaro is a rare example of a character without any flaws, but we only see him on the surface level and don't see his family or how he grew up, as you can never really know somebody until you see their life as a whole and not just the highlights. My favorite moment, however, is when Shuntaro meets PunPun again. It was a beautiful moment of two childhood friends seeing each other for the final time, with Shuntaro waving goodbye to him. This really got me because it's the realization that PunPun's story has come to its natural end, and that he's just one person in a world of so many. That PunPun will live out his life normally, but will still never forget all the mistakes and regrets he's made along the way. It's also revealed that Yuichi's son, Sora, was born on the 7th of July, which helps to indicate the start of the new world, while showing that we as humans are all born with darkness inside of us, as Sora also has the dark spot. The final end to the story, seeing the school where Shuntaro works, where a new girl transfers in and a young student falls in love with her at first sight, reinforcing the message that no matter what, the cycle will always repeat itself, but that it's also up to each person's choices that will make each cycle unique from the previous iteration. Oyasumi PunPun is an incredible manga experience that is filled with a dense and populated world. It has a multitude of relatable characters that are all flawed in their own way that still allow you to sympathize with them even though they're not perfect, with a story that never lets you know what's really going on, allowing the reader to think for themselves. It does an amazing job detailing the impact that we as humans can have on one another, and that even the most minute thing can have lasting effects on us throughout our lives, accompanied by a beautiful and bittersweet ending that perfectly brings the story together and reinforces the message that life goes on. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all in the next one.